Hi, I'm Cody Anderson, one of the pastors at Parker United Methodist Church. Well, there was this well-known Christian businessman who was going around visiting different churches, and he went to this particular church and asked if he could share his testimony. The pastor agreed, and so he stood up in front of the congregation and he began his testimony this way. I have a fine family, a large house, a successful business, people who clean my house and do take care of my yard and take my children to where they need to go. I have a good reputation. I have plenty of money so that I can support some Christian ministries very generously. And with all of my spare time, I can volunteer in huge ways that will help other people. Many organizations actually want me to be on their board of directors. I have good health and almost unlimited opportunities. What more could I ask from God? And he took a minute to pause for effect when this voice shouted from the back of the sanctuary, "How about asking God for a good dose of humility?" Humility is one of those things that is difficult for most of us. Being humble doesn't come naturally to us, especially in our society, right? A society that is always trying to keep up with the Joneses, that sees what everyone else is doing and wants to be included in that glory. So oftentimes we find ourselves in conversations where we're bragging about our home, our house size, or our yard. We're bragging about what kind of car we drive or what activities our kids are involved in and what great schools they go to. We find ourselves bragging about our accomplishments because certainly that will help raise us up in the eyes of those who are around us. But actually, when we look at Scripture, one of the things that is spoken about over and over and over again is to be humble. Be humble. In fact, in James chapter 4, verses 6 through 10, it says this. Therefore, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. There's several pieces in this scripture that stick out to me so much. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God and resist the devil. It reminds me that a lot of times we choose to be proud. We choose to put ourselves above others. And the only way that we can resist the devil, as James tells us, is to humble ourselves, to be reminded of who we are and that we are God's, to draw close to God and to embrace that spirit of humility. Now, there is nothing more that humbles me than a moment where I am walking down the street and I fall off of a curb and people are watching, right? That is a source of humility, of a moment of being brought down. But those moments are about a vulnerability, are about, oh my gosh, people are now seeing that I am human, that I do fall, that I do make mistakes. Because part of being proud is putting on a mask and hiding who we truly are, hiding that we have insecurities, hiding that we're sometimes that we fail, hiding that we don't always have all the answers, hiding that sometimes we fall, we make huge mistakes. And the challenge for us is to lower our guard, to take off the mask, to be vulnerable, to let others see us for who we are. Like I said, there are so many scriptures about humility. Colossians 3:12, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, with kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. All of those things go together, don't they? Humility, you can't be humble if you're not compassionate towards others, if you're not being kind towards others, if you're not living a life of gentleness, if you're not being patient. Putting others above yourself means that you have to embrace or clothe yourself with compassion, with kindness, with gentleness, and patience. And the greatest example of that is obviously Jesus. Right? Jesus, who humbled himself, riding on a donkey into Jerusalem, washing his disciples' feet, getting down on his knees in front of his disciples and washing their feet, being around people who were lepers or who were sinners or who were deemed unclean, humbling himself so that he could take care of others. And of course, humbling himself to death on a cross. Humility is hard. It is a hard journey that we are called to go on, to follow Jesus. Ephesians 4:2 says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. This season is starting to heat up politically and with more discourse. What would it look like in our communities if we were to humble ourselves? To not hold on to our pride, to believe that we have the right answers, to believe that we know what is best, to put ourselves above others. But what would it look like if we were to humble ourselves, to clothe ourselves with compassion, to listen to what other people are saying, to be kind to those even if they disagree with us, to be gentle, which means slow to respond, slow to anger, but just in a spirit of compassion and gentleness that is patient and bears with one another. That is really hard to do. And we saw that in our superhero this week, Thor. Thor, who is prideful in the beginning of his story, who believes that all these things should come to him, and yet in the end finds that putting others above himself is what a true leader does. Also what a true follower of Jesus does, putting others before ourselves. And it's hard. It is really hard. So I challenge you to clothe yourself with humility, to enter into this world with a spirit of compassion and grace, to take off your mask because you don't know all the answers, neither do I. You don't have to carry it all and look like you have it all together because neither do I. And that spirit of humility allows others to also embrace their own humanness, their own humanity, their own humility. So clothe yourself with compassion. And remember that God gives us more grace. That as God opposes the proud, God shows favor to the humble. So let us humble ourselves before the Lord and know that God will lift us up.